Hey nerds, what's up? The time has finally come to talk about Amazon Prime's Wheel of Time Season 1. In a sentence, my feelings are, despite excellent casting and some moments and scenes that truly shone and really felt like the Wheel of Time, ultimately Season 1 was a disappointment to me due to the lack of attention to detail, some confusing character arc decisions, and inconsistent follow-through. So those are the 5 topics we'll be covering today in the video. Real quick before we jump into that, I want to make 2 little disclaimers, I guess. A lot of people thought that I went into the Wheel of Time show doing those differences episodes to immediately hate on the show, which was not my intention at all. I would love to do those kind of videos on adaptations I love. I am just very interested in the differences between books and their adaptations. When I saw the Hamilton play, I fell in love with it, and then I went and read the 1,200-page Hamilton biography. I just like to know, and I thought it would be helpful for others who may not want to read Wheel of Time or read it a long time ago, so it was not intentionally a negative thing. Also, last week I made a video about adaptations in general, and I kind of feel like it is a part 1 to this video, talking about kind of fans' expectations, my own misconceptions, and I really recommend you give that a watch if you kind of want the full picture. With that being said, see you after the jump. Let's start off with excellent casting. I'm gonna be honest, guys, I fell in love with pretty much everybody in this entire cast. The few I'm gonna talk about were the huge standouts to me. Number 1 being Moraine, played by Rosamund Pike. This is my Moraine, guys. Despite like maybe some screenwriting decisions I didn't agree with, her presence on screen was just exactly how I imagined Moraine, and I am just so grateful for this gift because Moraine is one of my favorite literary characters, period. I fell in love with her in the Wheel of Time. She's still my favorite character, and I'm just so grateful that if season 1 gave me anything, it gave me Pike as Moraine. I also thought Lan did an incredible job. I'm sorry I forget his actor's name, I'll put it here. I thought he brought such. The next person I need to talk about is Josha Stradowski as Rand. Man, they didn't give Rand a lot to do, but he just nailed Rand's presence so much. I really fell in love with his depiction of Rand. So of all the characters, to have me love Moraine and Rand the most just fills my heart with joy. I'm also so sad we're losing Barney Harris as Matt. It's very funny because I am kind of annoyed with what they did with Matt. I feel like they really did him a disservice, but still Barney Harris, like he's the one for sure. They claim he's a fan because he somehow brought Matt out in every possible way. I'm so sad that we're gonna lose him. Hopefully the next Matt does his excellent job as Harris did. I really loved him. A random one I wanna bring up is Leandrin. I have talked about her the entire time we have been doing these episodes. I absolutely love her portrayal of Leandrin. It is just the right amount of kind of like conniving and sneaky, but intelligent. And it's kind of one of those random side characters that I thought really pulled through for me, like really stole the show whenever she was on screen. I also loved Nynaeve. She did a great job. Perrin, a lot of people haven't been liking the actor who played Perrin. I love him. They keep saying like, well, he just kind of acts stupid sometimes. And I'm like, that's what's in the book. The book is that people think Perrin is stupid because he's quiet and stoic and takes some time to think. I feel like he nailed it. I wish he'd been given more to do, but I really liked that. I pretty much, if I didn't mention somebody, I liked them all. I think there was only one miscast for me, and that was Min. I just always personally imagined Min as much more like boyish youthful, maybe not as jaded, and so that might have been a screenwriting thing, but it just didn't, that was the only one that didn't really resonate for me. The other quick casting thing I wanted to talk about is they decided to kind of drop the ageless look of the Aes Sedai, which I am grateful for. Reason being is on screen, I think the only way to portray ageless is to cast women way too young for the roles. And I don't think that that would carry the presence and commanding that you need. Can you imagine if someone not Moraine's age, if we got a 20-year-old playing Moraine for the ageless look instead of Rosamund Pike, who's actually Moraine's age? I'm very, very grateful for that, and I think it was a good decision. So yes, I like that. Let's move on to some of the wonderful moments in this Wheel of Time show, because there were some. The first one I think of is the smallest moment of Matt talking to Elsie. It was just a heartwarming moment. It was one of those moments that works for a non-book reader and works for a book reader because we're getting some foreshadowing. I loved that scene. Obviously, blood snow, insane. I rewatched that scene, kind of gave me a little teary the second time I watched it. It gave me chills the first time. The way it nailed the AL's strength while also giving us an important world building piece and making it so emotional. What a magnificent scene. I actually think they did a pretty good job condensing the dark friend thing down. We always knew we weren't gonna see Rand and Matt go to town to town to town. There just wasn't gonna be enough time to do something repetitive like that on TV. I really liked the example they used in the show. I thought it was well done. I've told you guys that I've been a fan of how they increased Lan and Nynaeve's romantic plot points. I think that romance comes out of nowhere in the book. I know many fans agree with me, and whether the scenes were a little cheesy or not, I appreciated that they were trying to grow that, and I really enjoyed their on-screen chemistry and how they kind of expanded that storyline. I'm always going to be a fan of that. Also, some of the changes they made that I thought suited the story pretty well, like Rand and Moiraine going into the Blight alone. I do not think that was a bad choice. I actually quite liked it. I also liked the way they had Egwene and Rand talk about each other. In the books, if you haven't read them, they do spend a lot of time, like when they're apart, missing each other, but it's maybe a little cheesy. It's like, oh, I miss them. I gotta save her. I gotta save him. And I kind of like this instead, this thread of like, well, Rand's gonna follow where you go, Egwene. It just, I don't know, something about it just felt a little bit more realistic in the way it was portrayed, and I really enjoyed that. You know, I also really liked, as you guys know, episodes 4 and 7 were kind of some of my favorites. And in episode 4, I enjoyed how they brought the Tower politics into it. I enjoyed finding out more about Logain. I think it worked. I think those are the things that really worked for me. Okay, let's move into my first negative point, which was the lack of attention to detail. This is something that is really from a show perspective that I kept noticing over and over. And the thing is, when you're adapting a fantasy novel like The Wheel of Time, which has very specific foreshadowing, very specific magic systems, it becomes even more noticeable when things lack detail. So let me give some examples. The biggest one that I think of is how in the exact same episode, which was episode 4, some of the Aes Sedai are talking about how they cannot see men's weaves. But then at the end of that same episode, Logain sees Nynaeve's weaves when he says that she's brighter than the sun. That's literally directly contradicting itself within the same episode. Another example would be in their little bonus content, they have a whole thing on Saidar and Saidin, which means that in the canon of the show, they are keeping that the source has a male half and a female half. So then why in the beginning of the show does Leandrin quote, "When you touch the source, you make it dirty"? That kind of slip, it's so easy to fix. You have the exact same scene, the exact same everything, and the sentence instead is, "When you use the power, it's dirty. Women's source is clean," or whatever it is. I mean, that wasn't eloquent, but you know what I mean. Like, you need so little change in that one sentence to be more detail-oriented towards the lore that you are supporting within the show according to your bonus content. And then there's silly ones, like in the book in the Blight, they say don't touch anything, so they keep that in the show, but they change the Blight so it's literally impossible not to touch anything. So this is people who haven't even read the books are laughing about this when they go, don't touch anything, and then in the next scene, they like lie down to take a nap. It's just attention to detail on the smallest thing. That's not even like a book complaint. Or Nynaeve telling Lan that she can help him trace Moiraine because Moiraine has a tell and that's how she tracked them. When Lan has been with Moiraine for like a decade or more, you think the master tracker Lan hasn't figured out Moraine's tell yet? Or even Pat and Fane can get through the waves without the one power, but we only see Moiraine get through the waves with the power. Now, I know that this is probably due to Barney Harris leaving, so I've been given a lot of leeway about those, but it felt like, well, you could have just refilmed maybe something slightly different to make that work better. So this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. It's just these details that constantly contradict each other within its own narrative is just a little bit of a sloppy storytelling. And the problem with sloppy storytelling, especially in an epic like Wheel of Time, is that those build up and really come back to bite you in the end. Because how are you going to explain those away? It has nothing to do with being different from the book. It has to do with being consistent within your own narrative that you are telling. And that kind of sloppiness makes me worried for the future storytelling in other ways, but because we can't even keep our own show's details together. So I really think they need to like hire literally someone whose only job it is to make sure things are consistent. Ideally, maybe with some book knowledge, just so they kind of understand, but I'm just really surprised by that. Let's move into some character development choices, and I'm gonna talk today about some specific characters that I think it affects the most. First, we're gonna start with Egwene. Egwene is such an interesting case because the show plays out that maybe Rafe's favorite character was Egwene, which is not a problem. Egwene is great, but it reminds me of the problems that you have in the Harry Potter series. I'm gonna try to find the video I watched on it that was so good explaining how Hermione kind of got ruined in the films because the director said she was his favorite character, and so he gave her all of his favorite lines and he changed her character in a way that actually reduced her character. And that's what I feel like happened with Egwene. It seems like a lot of the changes the show made was to make Egwene a stronger female character. Unfortunately for me, I feel like their changes actually made her weaker and less interesting. I talk about this in my Why I Like Brandon Sanderson's Female Characters so much, but there is this trend in shows and movies that I've seen that the only way a female character can display strength is if she displays a man's strength. If she is a strong fighter, if she is physically strong, if she can save people. In my opinion, this is the most boring type of strength. Now, for some characters, this works amazing. I talk about how Katniss needed that. She's an amazing character. But guess what? And we also have characters in the Wheel of Time who are amazing at that, and it's a great story for them, a la Avienda, who we will meet later. But it's not Egwene's storyline. Egwene's strength primarily in the books comes from the fact that she is one of the only two river people who is fine leaving her past behind. And I think that is such an interesting character trait. And what's so interesting is that by making her part of the whole You Could Be the Dragon Reborn, they actually remove Egwene's agency, because in the book, Egwene is like, hey, you're not leaving me behind. I don't care if you don't need me. I want to go to the tower. You said I could have some power. I'm going. What? That's strength? She was one of the only characters who wasn't pulled along and forced to go. She chose to go. And that choice to me is actually stronger than being given the storyline of, being Ta'veren or whatever. And then when she's with Moraine, she unbraids her hair in the book, and then she's so embarrassed when Nynaeve finds them because she thinks that Nynaeve is going to give her total garbage for unbraiding her hair to emulate Moraine. But she stands her ground. It's like, I'm not going to change it just because I'm embarrassed that Nynaeve has seen me like this. Her whole arc is about how she's one of the only ones who doesn't talk about going back to the Two Rivers someday. She's happy to spread her wings and be someone new. And if that's not strength, I don't know what is. And it's not like she can't hold her own. I mean, I told you guys before, she has that awesome scene where Perrin's barely surviving in the wilderness and she's doing great. Like, by trying to make Egwene kill a White Cloak instead of being afraid of him and do all of these things, it made her more boring. What did Egwene really accomplish in this first season? Not much. What's so interesting is, sure, you have Nynaeve saying, don't reduce Egwene as someone to be won, but the narrative is doing that to her. You didn't need to add the Perrin-Rand love triangle thing. Your narrative is reducing Egwene. And so I'm just really curious about why they made those changes when I actually think the book version presented a stronger female character. Let's talk about Moraine. What's interesting is that I had heard a long time ago that they were going to make Moraine the main character, but I thought it was only for the first couple episodes. I'm gonna be honest, I agree with that decision. I enjoyed having that bigger focus on Moraine in the first couple episodes because I do think that brings a little bit more interest, because they wanted the viewers to not know who the dragon was, like Moraine in the book doesn't know who the dragon is. We do because we know the viewpoint character. Where I think this fails is they ended up focusing too much on Moraine in season 1 in ways that it didn't matter. And I realized that this is my primary issue with episodes 5 and 6, not the episodes themselves, but that they belonged in season 2. All of this tower politics and that kind of Moraine storyline, really, we just don't need it until season 2. And so spending all that time in season 1 doesn't make a ton of sense to me when we could have focused equally on Moraine and other characters. Particularly, I was thinking is, if they wanted Moraine to be more of the main character in this first season, why not focus on her and her building relationships with each of the Two Rivers kids? Because that would be both growth for Moraine and show us character arcs for the Two Rivers folk. And I think that would have been a better use of time when it came to Moraine. Okay, let's talk about Rand. Rand is someone we really need to talk about. I did an Instagram poll asking you guys who the main character of the Wheel of Time was, and 96% of you said it's Rand. Some of you to the point of getting a little feisty, being like, how could anyone think it wasn't Rand? And I said that you had to have at least read half the series to answer the question. So Rand is unequivocally our main character of the series. So why does he not have main character energy in our show? Here's the deal. Again, I'm totally fine with the Moraine change. I think it's positive. I love Moraine, it's fine. But we just didn't give Rand anything to do. And what's interesting is many fans agree that Rand is a little bland in the first couple of books. He's a little bland. So the question is as a showrunner, if you know that fans think your main character is just a little bland in the beginning, why would you make the choice to make him more bland? Why wouldn't instead you think, how can we make Rand more interesting from the very get-go? That decision just doesn't make any sense to me. And what really shocked me is someone on Reddit through episode 6 said how much screen time everyone had, and Rand actually has the second most screen time, which shocks everyone who finds out because he doesn't feel like he has screen time because he is not doing anything within his screen time. Rand never got any hero moments. Rand never got anything that makes him interesting to characters. I had a lot of people who hadn't read the book be like, I feel like it's probably gonna be Rand because they're not paying attention to him, but I hope it's not because he's boring. Yeah, because they didn't give him any story. And even episode 7, when they give him those flashbacks of how he knows he's been the dragon the whole time, I actually quite liked that scene. It needed to be 5 minutes. In fact, I talked to some of my friends who haven't read the books. They were super confused during that scene and did not know what was happening. Imagine if the flashback was the full Tam scene of him in the forest. One of my commenters made this amazing suggestion about what if they had flashback to him reading the prophecy and realizing that it was him because he wasn't born in the Two Rivers or whatever. Either way, they just needed to give him a storyline, and they waited till way too late in the season. And even then, they didn't give him any moments to make us interested in who he is or where he's going. And I think that lack of character arc is one of the biggest errors in this show. Overall, I'm just surprised that they didn't pick one thing to focus on for each character. We know that in a show, a lot of nuance is going to be lost. That's why you read a book over a show, because they just have more time to explain things. So if you're going to lose nuance, pick something for each character and stick with it. Egwene, pick her dreaming storyline. I didn't even talk about that. Why didn't they give her dreaming storyline? They could have upped that to 1,000 and made it so much more important. That would have been interesting. Nynaeve's healing storyline should have been way more focused on. It's crazy to me that they didn't have a scene of her trying to heal Matt. Like, that should be her one thing. She's the healer, you know? Pick one thing for every character. Matt's the jokester. Pick one thing and just hit it hard into the ground. That would have been easy, and I just feel like they just didn't quite get there. A lot of people have been comparing this to the timing of Lord of the Rings, which the unextended versions are about 6 to 7 hours in total across 3 books, and we had 8 hours in this first season, so comparable timing. So how come we feel like we know so much more about the characters in The Lord of the Rings? There are a lot of characters in The Lord of the Rings. I think of Boromir dying, and like, we cared about him. We knew what he was about, and he probably had very little screen time because Lord of the Rings used every single moment wisely. When you only have 8 hours to tell an incredibly complicated and long story, every single moment matters. And so if we take an example, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting if it was episode 6, I'm pretty sure, the Warder storyline, it might have been 5. I'm actually fine with that Warder storyline. I said I think it belongs in season 2, but let's pretend we keep it here. We have 10 minutes that could have easily been solved in 4. We didn't need, like, there's that scene where all the warders are talking. That was a perfect scene to explain how he was feeling. Why did we also have the Lan and Warder scene? Lan could have found him dead later without that scene, and it would have been just as effective. So now we wasted 4 minutes of character time that could have been somewhere else. Instead, we spent many scenes developing the same character trait. Every scene should be developing or adding to something new, and I just don't think the show quite succeeded on that. I also have to maybe go back on something I said earlier. Those were my direct reactions. At first, I was like, oh, that's fine that they went to Tarvalon. Now, after seeing the full season, I actually think their character arcs would have been served better in Camelin. I think leaving all that Tarvalon politics to the beginning of season 2 would have made more sense. I think in Camelin, it would have given Rand more things to do. He has that cool kind of Queen storyline, Queen's man, and overall, I just think our other characters would have had more to do in Camelin, where really only Moraine had something to do in the tower for the most part. I think those 2 episodes, much of the same stuff could have happened in that city, and it would have made just a little bit more sense. I don't think we really need to meet Swan until season 2. Finally, my last point I really want to talk about is inconsistent follow through. These are things the show set up and never delivered on. A good example is the heron-marked blade. I was so excited in episode 1 when they focused so much on that heron. I was like, here we go, here it is. And then we don't see it again until episode 7, and the only purpose it shows is to show us that it's Tam who's helping the AL women give birth. What a waste! It could have been a 30-second scene to have people asking Rand about that. Does anyone who hasn't read the books understand why it's a big deal that Tam was carrying that sword, or why Rand, who has it? Something that's easy to add in, but again, just kind of lacked that follow through. You say in episode 4 that the dragon is going to burn brighter than the sun, and then he doesn't. You clearly want a darker tone for the show than the books, so then you add people killing their wives instead of using the actual prologue from the book, which has somebody killing his wife. You pretend a bunch of people die at the end of the show, and then in after-show interviews tell us all that they're still alive, or by season 2 casting, you can tell they're still alive. That lacks follow-through. And I'm not gonna talk about all the times that they've lacked follow-through, which I think is a lot, but here's the one that I think is the most telling, which is Perrin killing his wife in episode 1. Now, if you guys will remember, that was a change that was hard for me, but I specifically said, I will see if the show convinces me on why they did that. I was ready to be convinced because I understood maybe where they were going with it. But then they never followed through on that. So instead it just totally reads like fridging a character. Perrin kills his wife in episode 1. Where are we in episode 8 with that storyline? We are nowhere. We have not developed the axe and the hammer hardly at all. We have not developed his wolf storyline at all, even though that's been hinted at the first few episodes. So now I have to ask, why did you have Perrin kill a wife? Because it did not add anything. And in fact, talking about inconsistent follow through, you had this weird Egwene, Rand, Perrin love triangle storyline. He killed his wife like a month ago. And he's like, yeah, I've always loved you. I go, talk about inappropriate. If there's something to make you dislike Perrin, it's like they forgot, like, oh, that's sort of inconvenient. We had him kill his wife for shock value, and now we kind of have to do something with it, but we're kind of over it. Like, yeah. So they didn't convince me on that change because they didn't follow through with it. I think that's a big thing. If you're gonna change something in the books, make it have purpose. Perrin killing his wife had no purpose within an 8-hour season. A little bit related to this is I feel like a lot of the times they relied on fans' book knowledge, but also didn't try to please fans about the book. Examples would be Loyal, The Shanshan, and Bad and Pain. To everyone I've talked to who does not read the books, these 3 things confuse them a lot. They have no idea who Pad and Pain is. They often say, why is that Loyal dude even here? He doesn't do anything. So it's almost like they put those things in the show to give fans something, but then don't adequately explain it to non-book fans. Why is that a problem? Well, the show needs to be good on its own merits. So if you have people really confused about those things, again, you had the time to develop those a little bit more and follow through on those threads. Okay, this is kind of a random section, but it's something I want to do. I'm going to go through a quick rewrite of the end of episode 8. Now let's be clear here. I do not think I'm a screenwriter. I think I'd be terrible at that job. I do not think I could adapt a show. This is not me trying to be like, I'd be better. I do not think that. Let's be clear. However, I think episode 8 is a great episode to showcase how very small tweaks needed to be made to make the entire show feel more of the spirit of the book. Episode 8, everyone being different and being where they are, it works, I think, with just some tweaks. And I want to show how it's not the changes themselves that fans, I think, are upset about. It's the way it doesn't keep to the spirit of our characters. So like, just indulge this thought process with me and tell me what you think. Lan should be leading the charge. If he's not with Moiraine and Rand, which I actually think could have also worked, why is he not being all Mallory? Why aren't they like, lead us? It's story development and it lets Lan be awesome being Lan, which I just feel like we haven't had enough of anyway. So first of all, these guys said I should be up on a wall. I've mentioned that, but you know, it just like makes more sense tactically. Honestly, my dream for how this plays out is that Algamar's sister tells Egwene and Nynaeve that she's weak sauce in the power. I mean, she didn't get to become full Aes Sedai, but she can guide them because she was trained in the tower. And then there's a scene with her being so shocked at how powerful Nynaeve and Egwene are, and that kind of gives us more of that story. And she's, you know, trying to guide them into using the power. Instead of Perrin literally doing nothing this episode, his story comes to a conclusion. I had a few ideas here, I think. One is that he could either pick up an axe or a hammer, furthering that storyline. Or even better, in my opinion, let's get a conclusion to the wolf storyline. Who shows up? Wolves. And they kill a bunch of people, and Fane still gets away, but it's awesome because the wolves and Perrin save Loyal from being stabbed by a dagger that supposedly, like, there's no return from. It would give Perrin something to do. You know, maybe like one of the wolves could like call him Wolf Brother, and like that's how we end with Perrin. So then you're like, what? But it also kind of gives a little bit of conclusion there. Also, again, Egwene and Nynaeve aren't really doing anything, and the fact that they kill that many Trollocs and Myrddraal as untrained is crazy and world-breaking, because if this many untrained Aes Sedai could kill that many Trollocs and Myrddraal, why wouldn't the White Tower be sending people out all the time to do this? There wouldn't be a problem anymore. And I know there's this interview with Rafe saying he wanted the girls to kill with lightning instead of Ram because he wanted to give them something to do, but in my opinion, he didn't give them anything to do. He took away their agency. They're not doing anything. Algamar's sister is, right? They don't have agency. In my opinion, we got Algamar's sister helping the women kill this huge wave of Trollocs and Myrddraal, and they're so shocked and they're proud of themselves because it's crazy amazing that they were able to do this. But then, of course, this other giant wave comes over the hill. They're tired, they're exhausted, they're close to burning out. How are they going to do this again? It causes tension. And maybe Nynaeve makes a cool speech about how basically they're dead, but she'll do anything for the two rivers, and she's just gonna go until she's dead, and maybe she's trying to save Egwene or something. And then maybe you could cut to Lan, and he's like leading the charge, and it's hopeless for him too, and they have like this moment from across the battlefield because they both care about the same things, and I don't know, it's like a romance moment too. There's a lot of character moments there. And then we get to Rand, and Rand has a moment where he uses the power and he shines brighter than the frickin' gosh dang sun, because that's what the Dragon Reborn is, and it would call back to those previous episodes. And he cares deeply about the two rivers, and we've already set up that he knows about the Trolloc attack, so subconsciously he sends a huge wave of lightning that destroys the rest of the Myrddraal and the Trollocs, and no one really knows how it happened, but it's a moment, and he saves everybody he loves. And then because of that, we wouldn't have this super dumb fake death scene with Nynaeve, and Egwene apparently wouldn't be healing death without trying, because that is a huge fantasy no people. We don't bring people back from the dead, okay? It's a bad idea because it breaks magic and it breaks future tension. If you can bring people back from the dead with apparently no cost, then you never have to worry about characters dying. Instead, this could maybe be a scene with Nynaeve and Egwene discussing how they need to go to the tower to get trained after this moment, and they're realizing how getting trained is important. This was actually a Sanderson idea. I forget if it was from like a Reddit or his live stream, but I really liked that idea because it sets them up for an arc for season 2, which I feel like is missing at the end of episode 8. In my opinion, I'd have Moiraine not be stilled. I know there's a lot of questioning whether she's stilled or just a weave that's tied off, but both Sanderson and Rafe use the term stilled in interviews that I've read with them, so I'm gonna assume it's stilled. I just don't think Moiraine needs another plot line, and especially not if I think where this one is going. I wish they'd save it for the character it's intended to be with later on, because I think it's a much more compelling storyline with her. And then finally, let's have the Shanshan at the end be destroying a city and not an empty coastline. Again, just attention to detail. Okay, I know that was silly. I just think it was an example of how the smallest little differences could have made us feel more connected to the characters and given us more follow-through, attention to detail, and clearer character arcs, which is pretty much all I've been talking about. So let's talk season 2. This may surprise some people, but I actually think we're at a tipping point. I think it is possible for season 2 to blow me away. I do. I don't think we're so far gone yet. Okay, yeah, we've had some detail problems, we've had some character arc problems, but it's nothing that couldn't be easily put on track if we give a little bit more attention and focus to the things that matter. Now, do I think they're gonna do this? Honestly, not necessarily, but I think it's possible. I don't think we're like that far away that it couldn't come back for me. So I'm gonna be interested to see where it is. Now, where does the blame lie? I don't know. I think it might be with Rafe. I also think it might be with Amazon. Rafe wanted 2 more episodes, Amazon said no. Rafe wanted a 2-hour premiere, Amazon said no. Would those things have helped? Maybe we would have gotten some more of that stuff. However, if you'll notice, a lot of my complaints aren't necessarily about changes or missing things. It's about follow through and detail. So I don't know. I do find it quite interesting that previously Rafe worked on a Marvel show. I think it was Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Because from what I can tell, I'm sorry, I haven't read the comics, but from the Marvel movies themselves, that universe, you can kind of introduce whatever you want willy-nilly. You know, they're kind of retelling things all the time. They're introducing new superheroes now and being like, it's fine, they weren't there for Thanos, we'll just explain it away. And because of the nature of the movies, it's mostly okay. That just isn't the case with big fantasy series like Game of Thrones, Stormlight Archive, Wheel of Time. Any of those sorts of things have very specific details that matter in the long run. It's not lore that is being worked on as you go. So I think it's interesting. I wonder, this is totally speculation, but I wonder if he kind of took that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. energy and applied it to a story that it really can't be applied to. Overall, those are my thoughts on the show. If you watched my adaptation video, which I really recommend you watch, I really wanted to make sure that I could articulate the problems I was having with season 1 without being like, it's not like the book, so it's bad. I think as fans, we need to be able to really understand and pinpoint what we mean about the feel of a book that isn't just different is bad. Because the problem with that is that It makes it too easy for other people to dismiss our concerns. It makes it too easy for them to say, well, they weren't going to be satisfied with anything unless it was scene by scene, which that is just, it's a small portion of the fandom. I talked about it, how people believe that and we wouldn't want it. I think most of us know that we don't need that. I do understand I am not a neutral ground. Someone who has been wearing a great serpent ring for the last like 8 or 9 years of their life every day because they loved the series so much, I understand I'm not neutral, okay? But I honestly promise you guys that I tried to give it the best chance because I was open to accepting whatever it was we got. So ultimately though, it was a little bit of a disappointment, but not just because of the changes, because of just the direction it went in. So please tell me what you thought below. I know there is going to be a lot of different opinions and I ask you to please respect them. Whether people love the show or hate the show, respect their opinions because it's all okay and it's ultimately, at the end of the day, we're talking about books. Let's keep it happy. If you like these kind of deep dives, please like and subscribe. That is the best way to support me. And if you want to see what I'm currently reading, as well as other nerdy rants, you can check me out on Instagram at bookborn.reviews. I'll see you next time.